On today's show, we are talking about the game Hades. Billy and I have both completed this game. Completed? Gotten to the credits of this game. If you don't want to be spoiled, we encourage you to go elsewhere.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets.
Welcome to Pile of Secrets. This is a new series on our channel where we talk about a game that we have completed. We envisioned this to be a place where we can interact with you guys, you the listener. So if you're listening and you'd like to join us on Pile of Secrets, let us know what game you'd like to talk about, and we would love to have you on. I am Jordan, aka Buckeye734.
I am Billy, aka Sunday School Billy. So what game are we talking about? We want to stay focused. We want to stay on track, which is not like us.
It's not.
What are we talking about tonight? What are you and I digging into? Brian's not welcome here.
Yes.
Tonight.
It actually feels like our father is not here, right? The person who's gonna watch over us and monitor how we're doing, right? That's kind of how I feel.
I mean, so it feels a little. I feel a little naughty because the only reason that we're doing this right now is because Brian asked me, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? Just talking about video game. And I said, yes, but let's bring a punching bag in for us to join us. And you immediately came. We both said, Jordan Gill.
Is that how the conversation went?
I'm paraphrasing. And so it feels weird that you and I are. I mean, we're good friends, but
but we're flying solo, right?
Yes.
Tonight we're talking about a game Billy and I have both completed, which is Hades. Supergiant Games. Hades might be one of my favorite games, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Hades. So for those of you who don't know, and those of you who haven't played Hades, Hades
shame on you.
Is a roguelite, right?
Roguelike. Those are both things, right? I can't give you a definition. I know it when I see it.
A roguelike / light in my mind, right, is a game where you repeatedly run through the same dungeon or randomly generated dungeon over and over and over again, while simultaneously maybe slowly gaining experience or buffing your character a little bit so that the next time it might not be quite as challenging, right? And it's not the same every time, right? It's
sure.
A randomly generated map, so each experience is a new experience, right?
So this is going to be games like Slay the Spire, which is a game I've sunk a lot of hours into. What are other?
Dead Cells.
There's one. What's the one where you? Rogue Legacy.
Rogue Legacy.
Where you inherit genes from previous ancestors, but you're sort of invading the same castle that changes and shifts.
This one's the best, right? In my opinion, Hades is by itself in terms of roguelikes / roguelites, right? I don't think there's another game in this genre that matches up to the quality of Hades. Everything
about Hades is great, not just good, but great. Have you watched the British Baking Show?
Like an episode of the British Baking Show.
I mean, my wife and mother-in-law love it, and I hem and haw. But it's fun to watch the British Baking Show for one reason, because everybody's so kind to each other, as opposed to our typical American culture of competition where everybody's insulting each other, oh, of course he lost, he's a turd nugget. Where they're oh man, no, you can tell people legitimately feel sorry. Anyway, all that to say, the British Baking Show, the love and the attention to detail and the emotion that's put into them baking cookies.
Right.
That's the creation that feels went into Hades.
Yeah, and that's I would agree with you, because I feel like Supergiant had the chance to just phone it in, right? We're gonna make Hades. It's gonna have all the Greek gods, and we're just gonna keep everything the same. But you can really tell that they, like, even when they had, like, okay, we have Achilles, right? Every line of dialogue that Achilles gives you, they've fleshed out that character, right? It's not just Achilles from, from mythology, right? It's the character Achilles that Supergiant Games created. I like my stories to be intentional, and they gave Achilles a lot of intentional dialogue to, lead you to believe things about his character.
If I ask you to like talk to me about Achilles, and we're not talking about, like I say, like Hades is off the table, talk to me about Achilles.
Right.
Like, what comes to mind? What are you talking about?
Achilles is a hero, or a hero who fought in wars.
He's real good.
He has an ankle. Strong. He has that trick ankle, right?
I think of Brad Pitt.
Oh, and Troy?
Yes. And, like, here's the thing. He's such a jerk in that movie. Mm-hmm. Like, start to finish, I don't think he's likable. And that's fine. And I think what's so cool about this game is that it feels like we're picking up where our cultural understanding of Greek mythology left off. Achilles in the game Hades seems very regretful. Mm-hmm. He's in the underworld, sort of like serving the house of Hades, and he has regrets. Yeah. Like, his character, I think, is sort of like defined by his regret, and has sort of like learned from his mistakes of like, oh yeah, like when I was young, when I was in the world, like this is what I valued, and it's not what I value anymore. And so the characters aren't just fleshed out in and of themselves within the game world, but within, I think, sort of like the general baseline, like, cultural knowledge that we have of Greek mythology. That, like, oh, I know who Achilles is. He's, like, really good fighter, sort of magically protected, but he died, and his friend Patroclus died. Like, right? Like, oh, no. But then you go to this game, you're like, oh, you're fleshing everything out.
Exactly.
That happened in the past, and the characters in the game world are living with their choices and the consequences of those choices from, like, what we know about the actual Greek mythology.
Yeah. So you're saying that a new player who comes into the game, right? Oh, I know who Achilles is. Comes in with all these assumptions, right? And Supergiant just got to run with that and say, they know this and this and this about Achilles. Well, let's make Achilles regret some of those things, right? And how does that kind of build this world and build this character from there, right? It's just so smart, I think, the way they went about this. I think of Patroclus, right? Just being like this warrior, sullen, right? But he's he's in what's supposed to be paradise, right? He's in Elysium, and he's supposed to be in this, like, hallowed place for warriors, right? And it's almost like to me it comes off as like almost like PTSD. He's like sitting there with like just traumatic stress from like, I'm in paradise, but all I still have is this Colosseum over here, like, to continue fighting and like killing, you know what I mean? So I just think some of these characters, they did such a good job of taking, like you said, what we already know about some of these Greek heroes, and letting them breathe. You know what I mean? Through character interactions. Do you think that's cheating? Like I think of like Hades and like God of War, who are like, borrowing from all this mythology, right?
Sure.
Do you think that's like we're already coming in sort of attached?
I think that it can't. I don't know. Like, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by like cheating. Like, oh, they're not creating their own new world and narrative. I mean, it's hard to get people invested in a new thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's not cheating because they got me invested in Greek mythology in a new way.
Yeah.
They took the old and made it new again. And there's nothing new under the sun anyway. So like anybody who's like, oh, it's a totally new story. It's like, no, screw that. You're a liar. You're lying to yourself. But then I think maybe that's what Supergiant figured out is like, no, we just like take this old thing and make it new. We show what happened to Patroclus and Achilles. And we give the player the agency to heal some of that regret through this game. So we've talked about a lot of the more, well, I guess, are those the only like human characters No, there's the champion of Elysium,
Theseus.
Theseus. And let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about Theseus. How they represented him in this game is exactly what he is like in Greek mythology. A total prick. He goes to the labyrinth. He slays the Minotaur. He does so by like seducing the king's daughter this is in Crete. He seduces the king's daughter. She has to escape with him because she's going to be killed because she helped him. She gave him like string and a sword. String to find his way through the maze, a sword to kill the Minotaur. They stop at an island. He ditches her, literally leaves her on an island, and then sailing home, conveniently forgets to change the sails on the ship to let his loving father know that he's returning. And so his father sees the ship's sails and thinks, my son is dead, and jumps off the tower of the castle. And then Theseus rides into port and becomes king.
Classic.
Classic Greek mythology. So that's like so charming that they made him such a blowhard, because he is.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of the like boss fights in that game, that's the one every time that I'm like,
oh my gosh, that's the one that hurts to lose.
Yes, that is true. That's the one when you lose, you're pretty upset. Also because you've made it through a couple stages so far. The Minotaur seems so cool though. Like, like Theseus is like so arrogant and so annoying. But then the Minotaur is just like, whatever.
They're both spouting language about like honor and the glory of battle and loyalty. Right, they're saying the same thing and in such different ways. As a couple, they are very endearing.
Don't you think it's weird that they're paired up though? Like the Minotaur that Theseus killed is now like
there's so much dialogue about that. How they've like buried the hatchet and they're like the champions of Elysium now. And I don't like. I would love. I mean, we could do a whole episode I think on each character, and maybe that's what this ends up becoming. It's weird. I think, but you sort of like step back, and maybe there's some sort of like sub-narrative going on there that I haven't thought about, of them burying the hatchet and getting along even though they're so different. Right, they are the sort of like precursor to Zagreus and Hades, his father, getting along and burying the hatchet even though they are so different.
I don't know. To me, we've talked about some of these characters that we've become emotionally attached to, right? Or like even like emotionally repulsed by in Theseus's case, because
that's an attachment. I mean, it's not like a healthy thing,
right? Exactly. And this is actually one of the things that I think separates Hades for me from a lot of other games. Throw aside that it has some of the best gameplay, throw aside that the story is so well thought out, the voice acting that is attached to all of that, I think elevates. Like, I'm trying to imagine Hades without the voice acting that they put in there, where I'm just like reading the dialogue. I don't think the game has nearly the effect that it did, with just some of the most phenomenal voice acting I think I've ever heard in a video game.
You have really well written dialogue. Each character has their own tone and their own way of saying things and their own perspective. And then the voice actors just nailed it.
Yeah,
they all
just
did so well.
It.
And maybe part of that was a little easier, right? Because we didn't quite get there because we started talking about Theseus, but like we've talked about the human characters, we haven't talked about the gods. And the gods are who you interact with. I think you could probably say the most, right? Each god gives you different power-ups, different abilities.
But only little snippets at a time, right?
Yes. And so it's like this very slow color by number, where you're filling in more with each god each time they lend you their aid.
Right, but you get a little bit of choice in that too, right? You get to decide, I want to pursue talking to this god more, right?
Yes.
And like developing
that. I think perhaps the dialogue was maybe easy, and this isn't to take away from the voice acting, but I think it was easier probably for them to nail, or maybe this was just like really well done on the developer's part, that like each, right? They're gods, so they have like their thing.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
Like Ares is the god of war, so he's always talking about I want to, and he's perhaps my least favorite, so maybe he's a poor one to lead with.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite god that you interact with?
Aphrodite.
Show that
It's a
clip
joke.
to your wife, please.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's ridiculous. It's Artemis.
Oh, really? Artemis is your favorite.
Artemis is great. She's humble. She's like focused. It doesn't feel like she feels like someone I'd be a friend with.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be like weird pressure or anything. It'd just be like, we're friends. And you're like fine with who I am. Whereas like Ares is like, oh, you need to kill more people before I give you my respect. It's like, screw you, Ares.
Well,
You're
I guess mine's kind of in that same vein, but because mine.
Let me guess.
Go ahead.
Let me guess. Hermes?
Nope.
All right, whatever.
Hermes is cool.
Then you're wrong. Whoever you pick, you're wrong.
I really like Dionysus. It's because he's always like, you can hear the party going on in the background, right?
Yes.
And he's always just like, talking like
The
come
bottle
join
popping.
us up here, you know? Like, it's just this like friendly like uncle. Like, that's what it feels like. Who's like,
No,
doesn't
I feel
actually
like,
care about you growing as a person, right? But is just out to have a good time.
like it's fine. It may be like a fun, but kind of like creepy uncle.
Oh, for sure.
I think
Greek
Poseidon
mythology.
is more like the fun uncle.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I mean, again, and like the developers either knew or definitely like researched their Greek mythology.
They took their time. There's no way you
Yes.
can see the like attention to detail on all of these things, right?
And I'm not super fresh on this, but there's Dionysius and Zagreus.
Yes.
There are connections in mythology, in actual mythology, between those two characters to the point that like some historians or mythologists mythologians would say that like, oh, they're actually the same, or in some
Right.
parts of the world they were worshipped as the same, or they sort of like morphed into the same, and that joke is actually played out in the game in a really fun, humorous way, as just like a little aside. So to go like that deep into mythology, everybody's great,
Yeah.
except Ares.
Except Ares.
He's just there. I get that they're all like one note, right? They're all like the gods of what they're the gods of.
Right. And actually, if I was actually going to revise my pick and say which god is actually my favorite one, it's actually Hades. Like, because
That's fair.
He's so
Yeah.
cool. He is so cool. Just his dialogue.
Cool.
Have I not been patient? Like,
He's cool if he's not your dad. You want him to be your friend's dad. You don't want him to be your dad.
He'd be a very hard dad to have, right?
Yeah, and right, like, I think, again, I cannot praise the writers of this game enough that they don't really fill in all the blanks.
They don't.
Like, I've got, I don't know, 150, 200 hours probably into Hades, and will play more, because it's just a game you can pick up and do a run or two and then put it back down.
Yep.
I don't know what the fallout was really between Zagreus and Hades, other than like unmet expectations, which I think is something we can probably all relate to with our own families to some capacity, whether that's parents or siblings.
Sure.
We all put pressure on ourselves, on each other, or have family members put pressure on us that we like don't meet, and that's at least a part of Zagreus and Hades' relationship.
Right. And I think especially Zagreus trying to find his mother, right? And being like, I don't know where my mother is, right? And you won't let me go look for her, right? Like, that's like giant wedge driven between a father and a son, right?
Yeah. I don't want to do like too many spoilers either. I mean, there's layers and levels to this game, and you get out of it, I think, what you put into it.
So Hades, right? I think we both agree. To me, it's the best roguelite, like bar none.
Yeah.
Do you I don't know. Do you agree with that assessment? Are you in on that?
I don't know. That's a bit of a pressureful question.
It is. I'm making you decide on the spot.
I'm not going to commit to that answer. I don't know what I would put ahead of it. I always fall back. I mean, I always fall back onto Slay the Spire, but they're such different games.
They're so
right?
different.
Like I would consider that more of like a deck building game than maybe a roguelite.
Yeah.
They both have that sort of random attribute to them. Man, I feel like I'm going to make 2 really dedicated communities angry by
pitting Hades
not being able.
Slay the Spire.
I love both so much. I'm a part of both subreddits, I think. I mean, if you're asking me which is sort of like the better creation of art, then it's Hades, hands down.
You heard it here, Slay the Spire fans.
God damn it! I'm sorry, Spire Slayers. Jordan, I think you mentioned this when we were first starting to play it. That it's a game that when you lose, you're like, oh crap, I lose. But
yeah, exactly.
I get to go back to like the base, right? Like the House of Hades, and talk to all my kind of friends.
Yep. Who are
like see what who are
gods.
But is there anybody who you don't like? And if you say Boldy, I'm done.
Who?
Boldy.
The Boulder?
Have you not? You don't talk to Boldy?
I don't know who Boldy is.
It's Sisyphus's boulder.
You can talk to the boulder?
Yes. You can give him nectar.
I didn't know that.
Sisyphus is cursed.
I knew that. I always talk to him.
Yes. He's cursed. For our listeners, he's cursed to push a boulder up a hill for eternity because he fooled death twice, I think. So he named his boulder Boldy and has carved a face into it. And it's like this very flat smile. And you can talk to the boulder and you can give him nectar to upgrade your relationship.
Oh my gosh. My mind is being blown.
Boldy never responds, but he does give you like a minor boon. Like 2% damage negation or something. Like it's a random little boon every time. It's fantastic.
That's really funny. Now I gotta go back and play. Yeah. I want to hear yours.
It's Eurydice. It's Eurydice. I don't understand how. I'm pretty sure she is entirely beloved. Orpheus is a minstrel, a human, a mortal. He in mythology, he loses his love, Eurydice, and travels to the underworld to reclaim her soul. But the deal that's made is, if you play your song, her spirit will follow you, and you can lead her out of the underworld, and she'll be alive again. But you can't look back at her. If you look back at her, it's done. And so Orpheus goes on this journey through the underworld and gets to, he's almost out. But he can't not look to see if she's there, and he looks, and she's gone, and it's a tragedy, right? It's terribly tragic. He's almost reclaimed his lost love, but it's lost, and Eurydice's just got such a damn chip on her shoulder. There is no remorse or forgiveness. She's just that's another relationship that you can try to mend. Because Orpheus isn't playing music anymore, and he's clearly so beat up about it. He is so hard on himself about it. And Eurydice's just man, it's all his fault. I'm not out of here. And I just wanted to be what the hell is wrong with you? He went to hell, not hell. Hell is Norse mythology. He went to the underworld,
right?
And tried to get you out, and the only reason he couldn't get you out is because his love of you was so great that he made a mistake. So the fact that she is so I get that she's upset that she's dead, but it's not his fault she's dead. It's you could say well, yeah, he messed up bringing you back to life, but man, his love was so great for you that he tried to bring you back to life. So I didn't really like her.
Yeah, it's interesting because now that you say this, right, I'm thinking of all the characters throughout the entire game, right? And I don't think there's really any that I really dislike.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's none that I'm I hate that person.
Sure.
And that's, I think, an actual accomplishment I could give to Supergiant, because they're taking all these characters, giving them complex backstories, right? That affect how they talk, affect how they interact, and they all feel so real, right? They all feel so distinct and separate characters, right? And all of them still come off for the most part as like, oh man, I can understand your reasoning. I can understand your motivation, right? And not look down at it as like, oh, you're just a jerk, or you're just making terrible decisions, right? Except for the Fury sister who doesn't talk.
Oh, murder.
Yeah, except for her.
Anything you don't like about this game? Anything that you're like, or like,
no,
this was an area that like could be improved, or something that could be a little bit better?
No.
And you have nothing. You have no qualms. This is a perfect game to you.
As far as roguelites go, right? It's
sure.
Do I say it's the best game of all time? No.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Right. But when I think of Hades and I think of what would I do to improve this game, I can't think of anything. Like maybe that the cast felt a little underpowered occasionally.
Sure.
Like I didn't find myself using it too much, and it kind of felt like this thing on the side. But other than that, like they give me variety in every run through. I can choose a different weapon every time. I can choose the weapons behind the weapons as I continue to go through and experiment with it. Like there's just so much freedom for me to play it however I want to play it, while also interweaving just a fantastic narrative that's really character driven. So I have no qualms. None. $25 on Steam. I checked this morning.
It's severely that's an underpriced game. Play it.
Thanks for joining us on Pile of Secrets. We hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you want more content, check out our podcast, 3Play Podcast. You can find us on YouTube and on Twitter at 3PlayCast. We will see you next time on Pile of Secrets. If you want a game, if you want us to talk about a game, if you want to join us to talk about a game, let us know. We'd love to have you on.
But enough talk! How about you?